I'm halfway across the world right now in Poland, filming a documentary. And that's why this is a little bit of a different conversation than we're usually having. I'd usually wait till my stream to have a conversation about this, but I think it's too important. I have too much on my mind to not talk about it. And even though I'm in Poland, I can still see all across Polish media conversations about the legal decision, the draft of a legal decision from one of the justices that was just leaked to the public. 2 months in advance of what we expected to hear any word about this. And it looks like it's a 5-4 decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. And I've got to be honest, it feels a little ironic that out of all the countries that I'm currently in, to hear a decision like this, it's Poland. It's the country that we've seen the most drastic changes in Europe when it comes to its abortion laws due to religious extremists grabbing hold of public society. And I have to say, I have an amazing impression of Poland. I love Poland. I love the food. I love the people. They're incredibly nice to me. And I love what they're doing right now in support of Ukraine. The whole reason I'm here is to film the Polish people's response to that crisis and cover the refugee crisis and the toll of the war, because I know that the Polish people have done a tremendous amount to support other human beings. I love Poland. But something I don't like about Poland was its restrictive laws around abortion, right? I remember when I flew in to Istanbul, which was my connecting flight to Poland, to Warsaw, before driving over to Lublin, where I am currently located. I remember flying into Istanbul, and I started to appreciate certain things that I have as a right to as an American. Many of you might not know this, but in Turkey, there is a lot of restrictive laws around the Kurds and exactly what you can and can't say around the Kurds. It has a long history attached to it, and if you say certain things about certain organizations, like I have in the past when it comes to the YPG, you can get in a lot of legal trouble, prison trouble. And what I didn't realize until I was literally landing in Istanbul is on me, I had some personal notes I wrote about my support for the YPG in Syria, which the Turkish government considers a terrorist organization. Now, the United States supported that group in the fight against ISIS. I think it's a ridiculous position that the Turkish state holds, and I think a lot of it is rooted in anti-Kurdish sentiment. And I was landing into this country, which has become notorious for its arresting of the press, arresting of Kurdish activists, arresting of Kurdish politicians. I thought, what if a Turkish border guard opened my notebook here and could speak English, read it, and saw exactly what I thought about the YPG? What if they thought I had ties to the YPG? I've talked to people who have fought with them. Would that be enough if they saw some DMs with people who fought the YPG or have been to Syria? Would I get in trouble? Would I be dragged away because I expressed support for the YPG? And it was in that moment that I started to truly appreciate certain press freedoms that I have as an American. And let me say, America has never been 100% on press freedoms, but it's something that's enshrined that I have as a right as a United States citizen. And when it comes to a lot of our contemporaries and other nations in the world, I think we're ahead of the curve when it comes to press freedoms, and we've generally been ahead of the curve. Has that always been the case? No. How the government treated communists in Hollywood, for example, during the Cold War is one example of that. But generally, I'm proud of that right, and I think it's good that we have it. And when I landed in Poland, I had a separate experience. And it didn't have to do with press freedoms, even though press freedoms in Poland is a whole other thing. It had to do with a right to a person to control their own body, bodily autonomy, because I know that the Polish government is full of religious extremists that are working double time to restrict a woman's right to health care around reproductive organs, a right to control their own body. And I remember landing and thinking, wow, this is another thing I appreciate as an American. This is another thing that as an American I feel actually a little patriotic about. right? I know on the left you're not supposed to be a patriot, and at least that's how the media talks about it, even though the vast majority of left-wing activists I have met are the most patriotic people I've ever met in my life. But it's something I was a little bit like, wow, I'm in a different country with a different culture, with a different legal system, and I'm starting to appreciate an aspect of my country that I haven't appreciated to the same extent before. And in under 1 month, my government disappoints me due to this leak, showing that the government is going to, well, the court, that is, the Supreme Court, looks set to overturn Roe versus Wade, the legal protections that stop people from being put in prison for getting abortions. And let me tell you, this isn't just like, oh, this gets overturned and maybe one day we'll see it possibly become illegal. If it gets overturned, we're going to see around 20 states immediately move towards banning abortion. We're going to see nearly half of the states in the union move towards banning abortion. Not only going after the people getting abortions, but also going after the people who give abortions, healthcare professionals. Remember, everybody, I hear so much bragging from a lot of Americans, like, well, our healthcare costs might be high, and not everybody has healthcare, but we have amazing healthcare innovation in this country. That's going to be stifled. And so that's another thing that people try to like drum up my patriotism in, and is now again failing, because it's kind of hard to innovate in reproductive rights if nearly half of your country bans reproductive health care. We're going to see nearly half of the states in the union go after this. So not only do we have the people getting abortions possibly going to prison, the people giving abortions, providing the health care, possibly going to prison, but then we have the people assisting people to get health care, possibly going to prison. If we look at these bounty laws, I'm very excited. Prison, fines, or whatever the state the states can do to discourage people from accessing reproductive health care. It's so strange being away from home while this is happening, because all my life I grew up around DC. I grew up in the DMV, it stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Anything that the metro system touches. And my grandfather worked in the Capitol his whole life for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and he would bring me to take your child to work day, or I would go to DC to eat from local food trucks or hang out with friends, and I would regularly see the Supreme Court. I didn't make some major note of it. For a short period of time, I thought about being a lawyer, but it was never something that interested me. I never wanted to be on the Supreme Court. The type of legalese never really interested me, but I made a note of it, that it was there. It was a building I passed quite regularly. It was a part of my local landscape. And that same building is now on the path to making a decision. And again, when I say it's on the path, I do mean that the Politico article that helped leak this information to the public, it seems authentic, this draft opinion. It seems like that's the path the court is headed, but nothing is final. Nothing is final whatsoever. I do want to remind people of that, but that's the path we're headed. That's what it seems to be the case. It's very, very likely now. That same building that it used to pass is now making a decision that will lead to millions upon millions, tens of millions of women not being able to access reproductive health care anymore. And not of their own decision making. It's not like these women just magically decided to move to, Saudi Arabia. Or it's not like these women have decided to all go celibate and swear against abortion and join the pro-life movement. This is a decision made against them, forced against them. The state is going into their personal lives and telling them, no, you cannot get an abortion. Going into the homes of people. And it is the Republican Party which has been fighting this fight for as long as I can remember, for the entirety of my life and way before my life. It is the Republican Party, the party of personal responsibility, personal freedoms, keeping the government out of the home. It is that party which has led us to this day, 50 years, nearly 50 years. It was 1973 this decision went in. In 1 year, it would have been the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. And in 50 years later, they're the party who helps bring it to the chopping block. Against what the vast majority of Americans want. There is no pollster you can find that says that the vast majority of Americans want to overturn Roe versus Wade. There is no poll that you can find that shows that the vast majority of Americans want to ban abortion. There is no pollster you can find that says that a majority of Americans want to penalize people getting abortions, or their doctors, or those who help them. None of that exists. That is data that is non-existent. And now we're going to see something against the interests of health when it comes to women, and against the interests of what the vast majority of Americans want. We're going to see that pushed upon them by the courts. And it's really sad, man. You know, my mom was born past Roe versus Wade. She was born into a world where she had the right to get an abortion, and it was codified in law. Constitutionally, she had the right to get an abortion. It was her reproductive health care rights. Nobody could trample on that. It was not the government's place, according to the law of the land. And when she passed away in 2017, she died with that right. But it seems that I'm being born in a different generation than she was. A different political sphere, a different world when it comes to reproductive health care rights. And it's not that public opinion has shifted. It's that the religious extremists that have grabbed a hold of positions of power have just gripped on tighter and tighter and garnered more influence to the point that it doesn't matter what the majority of Americans want. It doesn't matter what the court said in 1973. And that's when we go on to the point of, like, what do we do from here? Well, of course, this is not final, so there is the chance that a miracle could happen and we find out that this is fake, even though the authenticity of this report seems solid. It's possible that, I don't know, whoopsie daisies, I misdotted this I, or something changes, because again, this is a draft opinion, not the final official opinion. This is the same reason the Biden administration has yet to comment on the issue outside of Biden officially saying, hey everybody, I support Roe versus Wade, nothing else. This is unprecedented when it comes to a leak of this nature. We haven't seen this type of thing happen before. So there's that. Some people are talking about, well, maybe we can pack the court. That's not going to happen in the next 2 months' time or any time before putting in before this decision comes out. That's just not going to happen. Let's be realistic here. And of course, there's a whole moral debate around that. But let me just be for real with you. That is the least likely scenario. As far as I know, the Biden administration hasn't signed on to that. You're definitely not going to get Joe Manchin to sign on to that. And you're definitely not going to get Kyrsten Sinema and a whole host of other Democrats. And you're not going to get any Republican to agree with that. And we're talking about the Senate right now. And I don't even want to get into the moral debate around this because I'm just telling you it's not realistic, so let's use the more realistic path. So what are the other paths? Well, the most obvious one would be to pass a law on the federal level basically saying the government cannot trample upon a woman's bodily autonomy, that a woman has a right to get an abortion. A woman has a right to choose her reproductive health care options. Now, currently, we would need 60 votes in the Senate for that, okay? It'll get through Congress. Don't worry about that, right? You might even get it with a certain, a few more than usual Republican votes. Not the majority, but maybe a few more than usual. And when I say a few more, I mean maybe a couple dozen max, right? But in the Senate, you need 60. And even though The vast majority of Americans support a woman's right to choose, support Roe versus Wade, don't want to ban abortion, don't want people to be thrown in prison for getting an abortion, even though all these are true facts and are true for many of the districts that we're talking about here. The lobbying groups that have gotten these people into the positions of power they hold now, the institutions that have helped get these people into positions of power they hold now, they hold enough money and influence and blocks of power that they're not going to allow a Republican to say, hey, let's make it so we'll give a woman the right to choose, let's get out of the bedroom. They're not going to do that. The most you could see is a Susan Collins. Susan Collins, really. I mean, that's 51 votes. Maybe another 2. Hell, let's be gracious and say we got to 5. Not going to happen. Hell, you can get all the way up to 8, 9. You don't get to 60, it's not happening. Okay? So with the odds against it there, and I do think people should pressure their public officials, make them extremely uncomfortable when it comes to this issue, that doesn't look like it's going to work. Okay, so what's the other option? Well, you get rid of the filibuster. And boy howdy, who does that put that at the feet of? Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin once again. Kyrsten Sinema, you might be able to get her on this one. And this is not even acknowledging all the other Democrats who have objections about getting rid of the filibuster, but then it goes right back to Joe Manchin. And let me be honest with you, the prospects of getting Joe Manchin to get rid of the filibuster, even if just for this one issue, are shaky at best. And calling it shaky is, I still think, an overestimation of confidence. And so once you've looked at that, you're like, okay, well then what? And then you start thinking, well, maybe if we use this as political leverage to win in 2022, and then in 2022 we can maybe get enough senators or hold what we got. We're already going to have enough trouble holding what we got. Hold what we got, maybe expand it enough, and then we still don't have 60 votes. But maybe we could, like, I don't know, abolish the filibuster then? These are all ifs, buts, maybes, and if we do this, then maybe we do this. But going into 2022, we could very well see abortion banned in 20 states in this country, nearly half the country. I don't think it'll go that fast, but we'll see states, one after the other, after the other, after the other, domino. And we'll see it pretty fast. How fast, who knows? And so really there's a huge question mark over the future of reproductive health care rights in this country. And I gotta tell you, I feel pretty disgusted right now to be American. I feel very disappointed in my country when it comes to Roe v. Wade. And even if you wanted to make a legalistic argument with me, and you could argue to me, well, Dylan, this is why legalistically, it needed to be overturned. At the end of the day, then the response should still be then, okay, it should be codified federally then. Because that's what the majority of Americans support. And I think principally, it's an American principle of stay out of people's lives. This is their personal business, leave it to them. That doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. And I do want to bring up that in 2019, while on the campaign trail, Joe Biden did bring up the idea that codifying reproductive health care rights into federal law was important in case a situation like this happened. And so right now I would say, Joe, if you got any path on that possible, now would be the time, buddy, okay? I voted for you. And I'll vote Dems again 2022, do everything I can. I'll do that, but buddy, come on. Ultimately, can I also say, we can't rely on Joe Biden. We can't rely on even necessarily the Democratic Party. I've talked about many times, and this is what I'm going to wrap up with, because if I could keep doing, I could talk about this for hours, because I'm perturbed. obviously. I've talked a lot on this channel about the importance of being involved in local politics. I feel a very deep connection to my state of Maryland, and I know in my state, due to my legislators and our history as a state, abortion is not going to be banned in my state. It's not. In fact, I believe our state will be used to host people who want to flee states that ban abortion to get access to reproductive health care rights. Hell, if I could do that, I would love to offer some help. When it comes to other states, we're going to see these dominoes start to fall. And I want to say that, again, you can't rely on anyone else. It's up to you to get involved in Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and all these states Missouri, and all these states we're going to see the dominoes falling. Because let me tell you, a lot of these laws have already been voted into place, and the only thing stopping them is the arm of the courts. That's it. And so once the court decision comes down, they go into effect. And so these 2 months we have, now that this has been leaked to the public, we need to use it to not only organize on the federal level, but on the local and state level. And if there's anybody out there who thinks they could ever have an impact in politics, but have always held back in getting involved because they didn't know if it was the right time or if they could be a help, right now would be a good time. Contact your local Planned Parenthood. Contact your local state representative, county representative, representative on any level. And if their state representative's a Republican and they're going to tell you to piss off, contact another one in your state that isn't. Contact local activist organizations. Contact local organizers. And if there's none, you become that person. That's what I'll leave you guys with. See you guys later.